Nothing is ever truly lost, just hard to find. That is where the librarians come in. Hiya! Hope y'all are nice and hydrated this week as we make another monster. If you aren't hydrated, how about you pause the video and grab some water? I'm happy waiting. You got the water? Fantastic. Let's go over what we're doing today. This week, surprise, surprise, we're making a monster. However, because of the mess I drew myself into, I'm gonna have to, add another step in the process. We'll call it a tutorial on how we can expand the process we use to make monsters every week. How about we call it a 100 subscribers special? We'll start off in the usual fashion by drawing a creature based on the cards we selected. We have an especially strange monster this week. That was a pain for multiple reasons. First, drawing all the legs took a lot longer than I expected. And warning for folks who don't like centipedes, because our monster has that body shape. Okay, yeah. And the second issue is to figure out what the heck this monster is and what kind of narrative it's built in. Now, to run you all through the process of how this show usually goes, we come up with a monster, then we make some lore, assign a name, create abilities, list the stats, and write out core phrases to make a completed monster card. Well, seems like I can't stall any longer, so let's go to the lore. Some creatures are lowly, others dignified. Some are both. That may be where we're going today. This is a creature that looks silly, but probably has a great deal of explanation that turns the silliness into horror or maybe intrigue. How about tragedy? Maybe it belongs to an ancient and technologically driven species. Maybe it came from the stars, where sense becomes nonsense and nonsense becomes sense, and maybe this is just a bunch of BS I'm telling you to keep you occupied while I try to figure out what the heck to do here. There are a variety of options. Okay, I'm just stalling at this point. I'll admit, I usually at least have a direction before I get into the scripting process, but as I write this, the only idea I have is that the flower thing on its head has something magical to do. Maybe it's some kind of ley line Wi-Fi. But that's not enough to base a whole monster around. Well, I was hoping I wouldn't have to break this out so soon, but here we go. So, here's what I've been building up to. The Magical Thought Provoker. It's a random word generator made by Trent from Miscast. Yes, the same person who set up the Monsterbash where I got my prompt cards from. You don't have to use this specific tool. A normal random word generator works just as well, but I like the visuals and the words that come out of it are fantastic. Quick flashing lights warning, it'll be over in just a few seconds. So, let's give this tool some refreshes, and there we go. Safe now. The words we got are big, herd, manuscripts, treasure, and lazy. We have our prompts for the lore to combine with their monster. Oh, I think this is the perfect seasoning for some good brain soup. Okay, just wrapping up the tutorial, let's use these words to spark an additional set of ideas to clarify these thoughts and give yourself a direction. Think of it like the cards we start out with for the art. Okay, let's head to the lore for real this time. I think I got it. There's no such thing as lost forever. At least, not while these creatures exist. Whenever magic items or hoards of treasure would become forgotten or irretrievable, these creatures take them. Well, in a way, you see, they're too lazy to get the items themselves. Well, they would phrase it as them being too dignified for grunt work. Instead, they supervise expeditions with teams of minions or interns to do the dirty work. Their actual role is as extraplanar librarians, tracking magical items and important pieces of treasure, lending them out, and making sure that everything is well documented. This is where we get to those things on their heads. their antennas to connect with the herd. They can make pull requests for manuscripts, documenting all the relevant info for the magic items in the library. Now, where does this the herd come from? Well, the creatures themselves. You see, at the end of their life cycles, these monsters don't fully die. Instead, they go into a hibernation-esque state. Their bodies shut down all non-essential functions except for the brain and become biological computers as part of the herd database. Now, you may think of this as a terrifying prospect. These extraplanar beings control the highest, most powerful weapons and items. Seems like they would quickly become tyrannical conquerors or rule things as a shadow government. And they probably do at times, but that's not their biggest priority. No, these creatures love baked goods. That's their main drive, encouraging the proliferation and innovation of all kinds of baked goods. Biscuits, pies, cookies, bread, cakes, cobbler, all of these, both sweet and savory, are wonderful to these creatures. And it just so happens that baking innovation comes from societies that are doing pretty well. Of course, there are disasters, and maybe even people who figure out how to steal magic items from the vaults. Or maybe an item was lent out to someone who became corrupted by greed or pride. That's where the chosen ones come in. These are folks who are lent magical items with supremely powerful enchantments. The monsters have found that those chosen ones tend to direct their items' powers towards solving the biggest threat, which, of course, is the thing that prevents baked goods from being made. If there's a person who stole the items from the library in the first place, they would become a target for the hero. If there's, let's say, a world-splitting earthquake, that hero would then again work on fixing that earthquake and helping the people who were devastated. And if there's a great famine, plague, or anything else like that, again, the magic item allows the person to gain the power to help fix it. And then, of course, once an era of strife is over, once disasters are cleaned up, there tend to be feasts with plenty of baked goods around, which maybe just a few happen to go missing from a couple of the feasts. Alrighty, now that we have the background of these creatures, let's start filling out the monster card. For the name, I want to include librarian somewhere, but I'm not sure what would pair with that. Maybe something to do with the baked goods? Baked librarian is pretty funny, but that means something entirely different. Maybe herd librarians? No. Oh, how about librarians of the legendary vault? Next is the abilities. The clearest is that antenna, so let's call that connection to the herd. Next, these are interplanar beings, so we need to allow the librarians to cross across planar boundaries. How about planar gateway manifestation? Finally, let's give them something related to the magic items they hunt and catalog. How about access to the legendary vault? All right, with all that, let's move on to the stats. As usual, we'll be using the D&D 5e stat spread. Strength, we'll go to a -2. Very few of these creatures have done any sort of workouts, not that their body shape would help very much with that. Dexterity will be at a 0. Now, you don't want to be clumsy, but there's not much particular need for acrobatic displays of skill. Constitution, another -2. Again, no exercise, and these things are weenies. Now on to the mental stats. Intelligence goes to a 5. Librarians know a lot, and these librarians in particular basically have the internet built into their brains. Wisdom can go to a +4. They're good at sensing the auras of magical items. And on top of that, these librarians are fantastic at figuring out who to give the most powerful magic items. Though they are not infallible, which means it's a 4 instead of a 5. Charisma can be at a 2. They're pretty convincing, but also not too much. I mean, like, look at them. They're real freaking strange. Would you trust one of these librarians of a legendary vault if it came up to you and said, hey, we need you to take this item and just do whatever you want to fix the world with it? You know, that'd be a little bit strange. All right, now let's move on to the core phrases. These help guide the character's motivations and goals, giving DMs prompts to work off of when playing these monsters. Nothing is ever truly lost. This embodies, first off, the librarian's process of recovering magic items, then they were thought forever gone. But I also like the expansion of the phrase to include these monsters never losing hope. It works well with the idea that the librarians of the legendary vault keep lending out magic items to people even when great villains may have weaponry from the same source. Every item has a story. Respect it. One of the concepts I find underexplored in modern fiction is the idea of an item with a lineage. The only story where I found that this takes on a significant role in the character's arc is the Name of the Wind duology. These creatures are librarians for first and foremost, and caretakers of these magic items. They, better than anyone else, would keep the stories of the items. And when those items break, that would be a sad day indeed. Going out of the fiction, that's something I'm genuinely sad that we don't have anymore. As a zillennial, there are very few objects in my life that would ever function for long enough to pass down even one generation, let alone enough to gain a lineage. Planned obsolescence and anti-repair practices are crimes against humanity and the environment. Disposability removes our ability to pass on the useful objects that hold meaning to us and floods landfills with broken trash that could have been easily fixed otherwise. Okay, on a brighter note with less anti-corpo rhetoric, let's make that last core phrase. Bakeries hold the true treasures. It seems silly because it is, but I like the idea of the librarians of the legendary vault, creatures with access to such a huge amount of power, holding something so simple as a bakery, as the most holy isn't the right word, but it's close. To them, bakeries are such a special place that gives these librarians joy, and that's all they need in life. And that's that. Thank you all so much for 100 subscribers and the opportunity to see people enjoy my work. I'm genuinely happy that folks like what I make and think that it's creative. I've been making stuff for most of my life at this point, and this is the first time that anything that I have created has garnered such a response. Hopefully this keeps growing so we can make more people happier. That's a bit sappy to say, but I genuinely mean it. That's a part of my core philosophy. When I leave the world, I want people to be happier than when I entered it. If that happens because of me, I'll have succeeded in my life. There are plenty of other things on my bucket list, but that's item number one. Make people happy. So thank you again for giving me the chance to start down that path. With that, let's bring this video to a close. For those of you with dark skies, good night. And if you have bright days, good morning. Whatever part of the world you're from, I hope you have a lovely morning, afternoon, evening, and night. Goodbye!